Trending Burning Question. Presented by Samsonite. Powered by XUV400 and Cool Fans.
Thank you for joining us on the Trending Burning Question. The pictures from Turkey sending a very powerful message. In fact, there are survival stories, stories of how different countries have come to Turkey and Syria to help in whatever little ways that they can. Over 300 trained personnel from India are, as we speak, in Turkey trying to find those trapped in the rubble. The Indian Army has set up a field hospital in quake-hit Turkey's Iskenderun, where 106 rescued people are currently being treated. Many videos are coming in, and as we look into the role that India is playing in Turkey, here's a quick report on how India has been one of the first responders with one of the biggest teams on the ground in Operation Dost.
The deadliest earthquake of the century has devastated Turkey and Syria. The death toll has crossed 20,000. Several nations have joined hands to help the quake-hit nations. India was an early responder and launched the Operation Dost. Operation Dost aims to provide rescue and medical relief to Turkey and Syria. So far, 6 Operation Dost flights have reached Turkey. The Indian Army team of medical specialists are on the job 24/7, providing relief to the injured. Specialized search and rescue teams of NDRF have saved many lives, and the rescue operations are still on. On Indians stuck in Turkey, the MEA has said that the embassy is ascertaining their well-being. With the death toll rising with each passing day, India's Operation Dost ensures every possible help to the ailing nations. Bureau Report, Republic TV.
Kamal Sibal, former Foreign Secretary, joining us on the broadcast this evening. Thank you, Mr. Sibal, for joining us. First of all, the pictures that are coming in, heartbreaking pictures of little children, and God knows how many more people are trapped. But I'd like to get your view on, one, the rescue mission and the role that India is playing in it.
I think we made a necessary humanitarian gesture, because this kind of calamity can strike any country. We've had earthquakes in India, very powerful earthquakes in India too. So if the international community gets together to save people in distress and provide humanitarian aid, this is a show of international solidarity. So far as India is concerned, we are, as you know, providing ourselves, we are projecting ourselves as first responders, at least in our region, when there is a natural calamity. And we have shown that, we have demonstrated that when there was a tsunami, etc. So as part of that narrative that we have built up, that we have a sense of responsibility towards the international community, we have the means, we have the will to come to the aid of distressed people as part of our humanitarian disaster relief setup that we have in this country, which is functioning very well. So I think it was the right gesture, notwithstanding the fact that lately Turkey has not been particularly friendly towards us, but we have rightly set that aside and assumed our responsibility. The second thing is that at the time when we are presiding the G20, and in the context of the narrative that I have just mentioned, it's also important that we consolidate that narrative when we have the eyes of the world on us because of our G20 presidency. And we would have demonstrated, because people are watching. Developed and developing countries are watching what we are doing. So we have this opportunity to, in fact, consolidate that narrative in our favor as a responsible power, as a country which assumes its obligations towards the rest of the international community, and as I said, with the capacity to come forward very quickly when there is a humanitarian disaster in our larger region.
Yeah. And Mr. Sibal, you've been a foreign secretary, and looking at the size of the rescue missions right now in Turkey as we speak, and in fact as we speak there's a live shot from APTN of the rescue that's underway, so I'll just put that live shot in as well. Azerbaijan has about 700 trained personnel on the ground, Israel about 400, France 200, India 200, just the rescue teams, and we have medical teams roughly about 170. That makes it about 400 trained personnel on the ground, with India leading it with over 400 trained personnel. And in the context of what you said about particularly Turkey not being the friendliest, in that context, will things change going forward? How do you see this panning out?
Well, we can always hope for the best, but I'm not very hopeful that this will leave a lasting impression on Turkish policy making. You know, Erdogan, or Turkey under Erdogan, has been following a very self-centered foreign policy. They are members of NATO, but they have made a lot of NATO partners, so they are very unhappy. They are very close to Russia, but remember they shot down a Russian plane over Syria. And despite the fact that they've tried to mediate between Russia and Ukraine over the current conflict, they have supplied drones to Ukraine despite their very close ties with Russia. They are at odds with Russia in northern Syria. So they play their diplomatic cards very ably from their point of view, but it is very self-centered. And therefore, while they'll appreciate what we have done, given the fact that they have managed much greater contradictions in their foreign policy, they'll be able to manage this contradiction of being very friendly towards Pakistan and supporting them on an Islamic basis, and yet be appreciative of what India has done.
Yeah. A lot of criticism, especially on social media, even in Turkey. In fact, as we speak, Erdogan is facing a huge backlash. There is obviously this situation where nobody saw it coming, but I think their response, getting very angry reactions on the ground. But you mentioned Pakistan, a lot of anger that countries who otherwise pretended to be friends with Turkey aren't doing much in this moment. Is that also your observation?
Well, in the case of Pakistan,
yeah, they need to help themselves. Yeah.
The Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister wanted to go there personally, and they were asked to stay at home because they would have interfered with the operations that are going on. But Pakistan has very limited capacity. India has a huge capacity, this NDRF that we have created in our disaster management center. We have a lot of experience in this regard. That is one. The other is that I've not seen what China has done. For instance, you mentioned countries that have contributed relief efforts, but I don't know what China has done and to what degree or strength have they come to help in the operations on the ground. Europe is very close. Europe, you mentioned countries in Europe who have sent assistance. Germany especially has a huge Turkish population. And many of them are from this area. And therefore, locally, the Turkish German community would be very concerned about what is happening to their relatives in this part of the country. And therefore, I would suppose that Germany should have been there, ought to have been there in much greater strength relative to anybody else. With regard to Erdogan coming under criticism, to some extent, it is normal. Because when a disaster of this magnitude strikes and the public is suffering so much and the weather is so inclement and they have no shelter, naturally they want immediate assistance from the government. And when faced with such calamity which happens all of a sudden, it's very difficult for any country to muster resources immediately and give relief to the degree that the public would want. However, the criticism has been that he has 120,000 strong armed forces, that why didn't he immediately put the military on the job? Why did he wait for 24 hours or whatever it is before, in this emergency situation, to go to the help of the stricken people? So to that extent, and then of course the government is saying that the roads and the airports and everything else are not accessible, and there has been delay in giving relief, and he has acknowledged that there is dissatisfaction on the ground. So I would say that on the one hand, it is normal in these situations for the public not to be satisfied because they have expectations, and rightly so, that government will come to their assistance and not leave them in the lurch in open ground in these freezing temperatures. On the other hand, there are certain constraints that any government would face when faced with a calamity of this nature. But as I said, the fact that he didn't deploy the army straight away has been a point of criticism, certainly in the Turkish public.
Yeah.
And of course, the opposition party, the Republican People's Party, has been very critical of the manner in which Erdogan has handled the situation. Since elections are there in May, so there obviously a lot of electioneering will go around this also. The opposition would try and expose the government's lackadaisical response in order to, how should I say, keep the electoral battle in mind. But this is domestic politics.
Yeah. In fact, you asked a question of how many, it would be interesting to see how many rescue personnel, for example, China had said. There's one report, it was dated the 9th, that yesterday, which mentioned just 80 compared to the 400 plus that India has on the ground. So it's a pity, isn't it? I'd like to play out what the Turkish ambassador to India had to say about this. Specifically, he was asked questions on the response that he was getting from India. A very interesting soundbite that came in. Mr. Sibal, I'd like you to listen to that.
Operation Dost is a very important operation, and this is the operation of friendship, because Dost is a word in Hindi and Turkish which means friends, and this operation shows our friendship between India and Turkey, and friends always help each other. I remember 2 years ago in May 2021, I was exactly in this airplane, and Turkey sent 2 aircrafts loaded with COVID medical assistance. Now, after 2 years, now we have 2 huge devastating earthquakes in Turkey, and India is sending now search and rescue teams to Turkey. So because friends, real friends, help each other in their days if they are in need.
It will be helpful for Turkey?
Of course, because what we would need in Turkey, especially in the first 72 hours, is search and rescue actions together with emergency medical aid. And everything is, the start of the Operation Dost. It includes search and rescue teams and emergency medical aid. That's why it's very helpful.
The current situation is quite critical in Turkey.
Yes.
It all rises to near about 10,000. How would you look at this situation?
Sorry? It's too loud, yes.
How would you look at this situation? That call is near about 10,000.
It is almost 10,000, but we are racing against time, and there are still so many rebels, and the operation is continuing. Our government's bodies are also overall. There are more than 15,000 Turkish troops, rescue operations, doctors, and so on. They are Turkish Red Crescent is also there, and they are working there, and now also some foreign teams. So they are doing their best. They are working day and night in order to rescue people.
Last question to you, sir. The relationship between India and Turkey.
Sorry?
The relationship between India and Turkey will improve after both. The relationship between India and Turkey.
As I said, this is a symbolic operation, Operation Dost. It's always already proves that we are friends.
It will improve international relations.
Why not? Of course, we have to deepen our relations. Yes. Thank you. Thank you very much.
That was the Turkish ambassador to India. I mean, you heard the last few questions. For a country that any mention of India can't end or begin without a mention of Kashmir, and the fact that that we've responded the way that we have, there couldn't have been a better response, isn't it, Mr. Sibal?
Well, as ambassador, he said the right things. And naturally, he would thank India and put the Indian gesture in the right light. That's normal. But he doesn't determine Erdogan's policies or the policies of the Turkish government. It's for the Turkish government, Erdogan himself, to understand what Turkey could gain from stable India-Turkish ties, especially as India is rising. And Turkey is a very important regional player in that part of the world. So there's a good basis for a strong relationship. In fact, when I was ambassador there, our relationship was really looking up. And I had a very positive experience in Turkey professionally. And there was no question of they interfering in Kashmir or taking up Islamic causes and this and that. But things have changed under Erdogan, who has a particular view of Turkey's role in the Islamic world. And he's reputed to be close to the Muslim Brotherhood that dictates his policies. And it's unfortunate that when he came to Pakistan, he expressed concern about the sufferings of the Muslim brothers and sisters in Kashmir. That was the wrong thing to do, but that is part of his political philosophy. So what we have done will certainly be a positive factor.
Yes.
Ties, but I don't foresee any fundamental change in Turkey's position in our region, because the Pakistanis adore them, they adulate them. In fact, I was very amused when as ambassador to Turkey, I was told that the Pakistanis go and tell them that we are the inheritors of the Turkish Empire in India. I mean, if they go to this extent to lose their self-respect and demean themselves before a foreign country to say that we are now your successors in the Indian subcontinent, then what do you do?
Yeah. And my last question to you, sir, a short question. Many observing that maybe Syria not getting the kind of help that it should be getting. Syrians are reaching out. Or do you think more should be done there?
Yes, certainly. But the trouble there is that the earthquake in the northern part of Syria is a zone which is infested with terrorist organizations. In Idlib and elsewhere, there are these pockets of Islamic extremists. And then there is the sanctions problem. And the United States has come under a lot of criticism for not lifting sanctions or not doing something which would allow aid to flow to Syria in the northern part without breaching sanctions. Yes, Syria needs more attention. We have given assistance to Syria, but there's no way that we can send our C-17s to northern Syria and give relief on the ground. If this had happened in Syrian government-controlled areas, we would have definitely done that in as big a way, because we have very good ties with Syria.
Yeah. Mr. Kamal Sibal, thank you for joining us and giving us your time this evening. We felt this is a very important issue that needed to be addressed. A lot of people asking questions about how India is helping and whether India can do more. But I think we will continue to report the situation on the ground. Mr. Sibal, thank you for joining us. We'll leave you with these images that came in from Syria, the army hospital, the field hospital that was set up as over 100 Indian trained personnel from the army continue to treat over 100 in Turkey, those who are stuck under the rubble. A few days back, in fact, that was yesterday, last evening, when a video came in of a young girl who was rescued alive by the Indian team there, leaving you with those pictures. Thanks for watching.
Sakin.